Hello guys. I know this is a weird place to film an intro for a video, but I wanted to do it whilst the emotions were still raw. I've just done, a pretty horrible ride, I'll be honest with you. But I want to get a quick video out of a climb that I did today as a proper climb video. When me and Phil did the Cowlyd, among others, someone in the comments section of Phil's video said, "That's not even the hardest climb around here." He probably didn't say it with that tone at all. He probably thought he was being really nice and showing Phil other stuff, but I read it in that tone because I assume the worst in people because I'm not very nice myself. Anyway, I thought, well, I've got to go and give that climb a go, and I finally managed to get out and do it. And I really want to show you the climb without all of the baggage that came with the rest of this ride. As you can see, I'm filthy. God, I don't know why I've rotated the camera. That's going to be a nightmare for YouTube. Bike's filthy. It's making my house filthy. I need to clean it. But I've just been battling hypothermia for the last 4 hours, and I want to go and get in a lukewarm bath, which I slowly warm up to hot. Maybe I'll throw some onions and bay leaves in, carrot, some aromatics, slow cook myself for a few hours, dinner sorted. Anyway, I hope you enjoy Melin-y-Coed climb, which you're about to see now.
So in case you're wondering, I have not completely lost my marbles, although I was not quite with it when I filmed that intro. But as I said, this is Melin-y-Coed. Melin-y-Coed is the Strava segment. I think Melin-y-Coed means mill in the woods. Anyway, this is leaving the village of Llanrwst, which may be familiar to some. It's just on the edge of Snowdonia National Park, and it's a pretty little village with a medieval bridge and a beautiful tea rooms right on the river bank and lovely grassy banks for your kids to play in, and the river's like wide but shallow, and the centre of town is all stone and slate and a nice town square. Anyway, beautiful place. This road, not so glamorous. Industrial estate just as you leave, very agricultural. But this road currently is still Nebo Road, which may sound familiar to some of you, as it's one I've ridden a few times and shown once on here. And it is a gentleman's 6% for 6k or something along those lines. So once again I'm chasing Illy Gardner's time up here. Not a chance. So yeah, that means on my Garmin, you can see that Illy Gardner is obviously the only person I follow who's done this climb. And it was seeing that she'd done it a few weeks ago that reminded me that I really wanted to go and have a go. When like her or Feather or Ed or Cy Richardson come up as my person to chase, I just immediately think, nope, absolutely not. Don't care. I can just be impressed and not have a go. The only thing that is quite helpful is seeing how they've paced it. If they start putting a lot of time into me, then I know I'll put my foot down a little bit more, I guess. So I don't know Illy at all, but I follow her on Strava, and I suspect she'll have been confident enough to go hard here. Not me. So I've just turned off Nebo Road. I'm gonna silence my rambling on the bike because it wasn't very interesting, and I turn off and I go up a slight climb here. So technically this Strava segment has started, but as you can see it's a very casual lead in. There's no way I was going to go really hard on this section on my sort of first time, but if I were to come back and want to set a proper time up this hill, I think I would really turn the screw a little bit below threshold so it was sustainable, but really try and gather as much time as I could, because when you get to the meat of this climb, there's nothing you can do about pacing. You don't have a choice. You're either riding or you're not. So yeah, off this little road, it's a bit strange, this area, because I would have thought there's nothing down here really. We're not quite in Snowdonia National Park, but culturally we are, if that doesn't sound too wanky. It's very much like Snowdonia still. And as you see, you come into this little village of Melin-y-Coed, and it gets to be very pretty. I apologise in advance that both the cameras are obscured at one point or another by water. That's just what it was like today. Lovely bridge in Melin-y-Coed, by the way. And two, I've made the rear view camera bigger for this still, and I've cropped it inwards slightly, so rather than having the wide angle, I've made it narrower and I've made it larger, because I think the view from behind really helps illustrate quite what a mental climb this is. So while you've clicked on this video, let's get to the point, Nick. Is this climb harder than Cowlyd? I'll debate the merits of that argument as we go through. This is the start of it, guys. I think it's a sharp left here, and then madness. Now, Cowlyd is 3 and a bit K at 13.9%, and I think it's very consistently hard, bottom to top. And as you've seen, I'm almost a K into this, and there has been nothing challenging so far. This only averages 9% over 3.5K. However, I'm about to turn a corner and do the most ridiculous thing I think I've ever done on a bike. So yeah, we're going uphill. It doesn't look that bad on the camera, does it? It doesn't help that it's smearing. You can see that the road's wet and there's leaves everywhere. But oh my god, it's just going up. It's just going up in the way that Gwernant just went up. And you can kind of see that I've got my ride profile on my Garmin there, and it's just black now. And I think this is the point at which I decide to get into my 34 cassette on the back. 36-34 is my smallest gear, and I'm probably 50 metres up the main event of the climb. And I just thought, well, if I'm going to manage it, this is the only way I'm going to be able to do it. I'm having power pedal issues at the moment. It's completely my own fault. I managed to cross-thread my Garmin Vector 3s. Garmin, I think it's a huge design flaw that you've got a part that I have to replace every 100 hours or so, and it's a metal screw into a plastic body. It's just asking for cross-threading, but it's still me being an absolute monkey that's managed to do that. And it means I get right power pedal missing errors all the time. This part of the climb is stupid steep. Okay, the gradients say in 2021. I suspect if my barometer were working, it would be reading in the high 20s for this section. And it doesn't feel like it's been very long for those of you watching the video, but by here I started to think, I'm not capable of doing this. I can't get out the saddle at all. My VMO, if you know the muscle on the inside of your knee, of your quad, that was on fire to the extent that I thought, this is unsustainable. And I really didn't know whether I was going to be able to survive this climb. Now, Cowlyd does this as well, and Cowlyd has... Right. Recover. 100 or 150 metre sections that are this steep, and then little bits. And as you heard me just say then, I said recover, and that's because the gradient went down to 10 or 11%. That's not recovery, but it just means that if I do 4 kilometres an hour, 5 kilometres an hour, I can flush a little bit of lactate out of my legs. And then we're back on it. Unfortunately, my front camera, having had a good old soaking, is smearing a little bit. And maybe the rear camera, you can see what passes for recovery, what I've just been through there. And I think this section, okay, it's reading 10-11%, nonsense. Look at my rear view camera. Again, I'm thinking I'm going to fall off. My bike. And I can see this house, and I think surely next to a house there's going to be a little flat section for a driveway, or they're going to have levelled it off so that people can access it. Absolutely wrong. As I've had many a time in Wales, you start at the front of the house, at the bottom of the ground floor, and you end at the top of the ground floor, so you've basically ridden up an entire story in the length of the house, which is just silly, but very, very typical of roads around this area. And this is the point on the climb where I start to think, there's no way that I can maintain this seated. So I get out of the saddle. If you can see the quality of the road, it's not the finest idea in the world. And every so often, out of the saddle, my rear wheel slips. But I decide that I'm just willing to let that happen. I'm not in such a bad state that I actually can't afford to lose a little bit of speed. God, those noises aren't good, are they? I sound like... I don't know, like an animal that's been injured but hasn't died yet, which, well, is probably a fairly accurate analogy for how I felt.
So guys, I'm way down on power here because I just need to clear as much lactate as possible. It stays over 15% for a long while yet. I'm not even out of breath, I'm just out of leg.
Yeah, out of leg is how I felt this entire ride, actually. But I think you can see behind me now quite how much I've climbed. I was at the very bottom of that vista at the start of this climb. And this road just keeps going. So to get back to, is it harder than Cowlyd? I'd say what I've just done from that left-hand bend to here is harder than anything Cowlyd throws at you. And this is where the old debate comes up of,
Look at this.
what makes a climb hard? Because you got like Bamford Clough in the peaks, which isn't even that long, but is stupid steep. And is that harder than, say, Bulka Groes, which is 3.5k at 14% or something? You know, you can have the shortest, steepest thing in the world, and is that harder than a very long, steep, but not that steep hill? I don't know. I'd have to ride them back to back to tell you, but then I'd have to ride them, this one first, then Cowlyd, and then Cowlyd first, and then this one. And it's not an experiment I'm willing to put in for you guys.
There's still 2k to go.
There's me incredulous at how far there is to go. You know, this is reading 12-13%. I really believe it's over that, well over that for all of this so far. So all I can tell you is, from my experience of riding them both, I found this harder than I found Cowlyd. There was never a time up Cowlyd that I thought I wasn't going to complete it, and there was never a time that I was worried about coming off my bike, no matter how steep it got. Whereas I genuinely felt like, not just tired, I felt stressed on this climb. I was scared the whole way up, and that's not me being dramatic for the video. There was this genuine sensation of panic as well as everything else, because I had to be ultra focused on my bike handling. Now, that might be a representation of the conditions I rode them both in. I rode Cowlyd on a much nicer day, so it's not completely fair. And what I do think is, in a little while, I get respite on this climb.
I'm trying to treat myself to some out the saddle. I keep getting caught out.
I do keep getting caught out. It's very silly, but really I just need it. Now, people are going to tell me off for my cadence again, but I'm in my smallest gear. What do you want me to do? I'm doing, 40 to 60 to get up this climb. There is nothing else I can do, honestly. It's just survival. Partly, I think my cadence reads low because of the power sensor issue as well, which doesn't help. Now, I think over here I get a decent block of recovery.
Focus. Stupid.
I might need to mute that. That was I nearly fell off. I nearly fell off my bike right there because my back wheel slipped, and so I had to wobble the front wheel for stability, and then I kicked the front wheel as my foot came through, and I was really annoyed at myself because, like I say, I was stressed up here. I was nervous, and I was stressed, and I was irritable. Gradient's not right. You can see it's not 2%. I absolutely wish. You can see it wasn't -8% for that section before. The lighting looks really nice behind me, doesn't it? But that's not going to remain the case. So it's nice to see that there's still some power in my legs, but I'm absolutely struggling to put anything down. I'd liken it to, for those of you who Zwift, if you have a segment that you have to go for in Zwift Racing League, and you give it all you've got, if you were to then say, well, you should be able to ride at threshold still now, absolutely not. You know, even though I'm theoretically capable of it, my legs are just hurting so much. That's not the case. And then I come through, this is very Wales, this sort of farmyard, this, everything's not secured, you're just riding through the very middle of a farm. That's where the road goes. And It's sort of nice. It's sort of not at the same time. I don't know. I don't know what you think. And I think going through little settlements like that gives you a perspective of quite how much I'm still climbing. You know, it in the front camera, it doesn't look like I'm going that uphill now.
Oh God, I can see some orange on my Garmin. Come on, Nick.
Again, that absolute joy that I've expressed there is not hammed up for the camera. It's genuinely absolute relief that's what I can see. I was thinking here, like, oh, I want to go for the orange. I should go full gas until then, and then I can chill. And you can see that I'm doing 240 watts. Bloody hell! Like, how weak is that? And what's funny is I'd sort of lost all motivation to push myself here because, a bit like on Gwenant, I'd lost so much time not being able to get out the saddle. And top athletes with top mentality will go, well, okay, I can't do it the way I'd prefer to do it, so I have to do it another way. They'd know that here is the time to gain time. And I don't know, not decided that that's how I was going to approach this, which is a shame. I shouldn't have done that, but it's easy for me to say that now that I'm home and warm and not out 100 kilometers from home in a thunderstorm. So now the hard part of the climb is basically over, and I return to, is this harder than Cowlyd? Cowlyd never has the relief that I've had now. Even 2.5k in, there's switchbacks that are 20% from what I remember, and a lot of it remains 10%. Whereas here, it's pretty steadily 5%. And there's a long way to go, but it's pretty steadily 5%. And it's the question of, can you keep the chain tight for the rest of the time? That's hard, and it's mentally hard, and it's physically hard because you've emptied so much from your legs. But I don't believe it's quite as intense.
Whinging aside, it's beautiful. Lovely road.
So I don't know if you heard that, but genuinely, it is beautiful. Especially at the top, once you pass that little farm that I went through, it's really pretty. And this whole area around Llanrwst is like that. Nebo Road's the same. It's this old growth forest that lines this hillside. And for me, I think that's a really sort of pretty environment to be riding in. I'm a big fan of it, and the sort of semi-agricultural nature.
Hey mate, I'll get it if you want to get in.
I did know this was a gated road, but I forgot, and I bumped into the farmer. And it's nice to be nice, so I held the gate for him, and I've cut that out because there's no point me showing you a minute of the farmer driving his 4x4 through and giving me a thumbs up. Unfortunately, we go to a second gate. Basically, in this area, they don't want their livestock to get out, so it's hemmed in. And onwards I go again. Climb's very much over now, so I don't think we need to talk too much more about what you can see on the road. It's just a nice bit of road. I would like to know if you guys would prefer to ride Cowlyd or this. I feel like maybe I've talked this down. Don't let this fool you. That middle kilometre was the hardest thing I've ever ridden. It was harder than Gwenant. It was harder than any given kilometre on Cowlyd. I think overall the challenge is a little bit less, but I've never felt closer to pushing my bike as an adult than I did on this climb. I really, really, all the way up, didn't believe I was going to be able to complete it. The stress was real. Now, on the topic of stress, I had got soaked on this ride, which wasn't forecast, about an hour earlier. And lots of bits of me were numb, all the extremities, and the penis, if you want to know, unfortunately. Hands, feet and penis, that's what goes numb on me. And it was unpleasant and things hurt. And I just started to believe it was blue sky ahead of me and things were getting better. But then, as you come up here, I wasn't really aware of what you can see in the rear view footage. My camera's just cleaned itself, which is nice. And I really hope the rear view camera does justice to quite how apocalyptic the storm front behind me began to look. So, For the end of this climb, I started pushing by the way because I could see the gate at the top, and I really had a little bit of a final kick. Very little, but a little bit. And I hope the coloration you can see in that rear view footage, I'll make it bigger actually, shows what I had to come. I want to tell you that the Met Office described this day's forecast as sunny with light rain. It said nothing about apocalyptic thunderstorms, so thanks for that, Met Office. Not delighted at all. I was a little bit nervous. As you come up this final bit, you're in the field. Part of the reason that gate was there is because the road just runs through the field with no fencing, and sometimes there's cows in this field. Many of you all know I love cows, but a bit like Simon Richardson, I'm afraid of bumping into them on my bike. They don't necessarily like bikes, and I have no desire to get trampled. So I've made the rear camera bigger because I really I want you guys to feel my pain. You should have a panoramic view of Snowdonia here. You should be able to see Snowdon itself. You should be able to see Llywelyn. You can't even see the top of Cowlyd, just the other side of the valley, which tells you an awful lot. And this was something like 1 PM, so no, the sun isn't setting behind me. It's just the world ending, I guess. There's some sheep, so you see those sheep in the field, not cows, but very nice. Here's the final times. Okay, I did it in 20 minutes, pretty slow. I could have gone a lot faster, but never mind. And there's my rear view camera just for the very end. Just see how bad it was as I finished this climb. I hope you've enjoyed watching Melin-y-Coed. Look at that rainbow.
That was stupid. Absolutely stupid. I don't know if you can hear that, but that's thunder behind me, which wasn't forecast. I'm going to cycle away from it, but it's over some exposed moorland, so I'm sort of shitting myself. Don't really know what other options I've got. And I'm certainly most vulnerable here, so I'm going to get going as soon as possible, and I'm going to ride away from it and just hope for the best.